Each person must be fully convinced in his own mind. He who observes the day observes it for the Lord, and he who eats does so for the Lord, for he gives thanks to God, and he who eats not for the Lord, he does not eat and gives thanks to God. This is called the doctrine of the freedom of the gospel. And that means that every Christian, in matters of food and special days of obligation, is completely free to either eat or not eat, to either celebrate or not celebrate any particular day or any particular food. This is what Paul is teaching. And that means that when Seventh-day Adventists say that every Christian is committing a sin who honours the Sunday as a Sabbath, they are in error. But it's not an error that means they're not a Christian, it just means that they're a Christian with an error. The reality is Christians are free. And in the early church, when the Gentile church that had no Jewish culture became the dominant church, it started to observe the day of the resurrection like a Sabbath. And so the Sunday became a Sabbath, and that has passed into our culture, and Gentile Christians think of the Sunday as a Sabbath. And there's no problem with that if you want to, but you don't have to. It's one of the things that the Reformation rediscovered, is the idea that you don't have to keep the Sunday as a Sabbath. But I want to give you some good reasons why you should keep the Sunday as a Sabbath. Firstly, all human beings need to rest. It's important that we rest. We shouldn't be slaves to market economies, and we shouldn't be slaves to our jobs. And keeping a Sabbath is one of the demonstrations that you are not a people under bondage. And in Scripture, it is said that where the Spirit is, there is freedom, and that we are not a people born to bondage. And the Sabbath and keeping a Sabbath is one of the ways of demonstrating that we are free, because we lay down on the Sabbath all other concerns except the concern for God, showing that we are only bonded to God in covenant, and we are not bonded to any false god like money. Secondly, there is a social good for keeping a Sabbath. If we in this country have one day where everybody lays down their work, then that is one day you can go and see your friends, you can go and see your family, and we can use that day to renew the bonds of human fellowship. We can use that day as a way of building up community and social cohesion and strengthening our families and our friendships. And so it makes sense as a social good to give everybody the same day off, ladies and gentlemen. And because this is a Christian country, and because the tradition of the church has been Sunday, I think that Sunday, as a way of honouring our past and the traditions of the church, should be the day. But it doesn't have to be Sunday. It could be Saturday. And there is a biblical argument for making it a Saturday. And here's the biblical argument. Firstly, clearly, the Seventh-day Adventists are a people of weak conscience. They are scandalized by the idea of a Sunday Sabbath. But if you agree with my arguments, you would not be scandalized by a Saturday Sabbath. Secondly, a Saturday Sabbath more directly emulates the patterns of the Old Covenant, though we are not obliged to keep the idea of the Saturday Sabbath. And so you could have Saturday as a Sabbath and still celebrate the resurrection on a Sunday. These two things are not opposed to one another. Any questions on the Sabbath or what I've said about the Sabbath? Going once, going twice, gone.
Oh, we have 2 Sabbaths, Bob.
There is no reason, good point. There is no reason why we couldn't have 2 Sabbaths. Because remember, in the freedom of the gospel, you are free to honour any day unto the Lord. And so there is nothing to stop us having Saturday and Sunday as a Sabbath. So why not? Why not do both? And literally, that's what we're doing anyway. Saturdays and Sundays are days off. So enjoy them as Sabbaths. Give them to the Lord, and let's put down servile work. This freedom of the gospel is why America has Thanksgiving Day. Because the Puritans set aside a particular day to give thanks to the Lord that they survived the winter. I don't understand how it ends up being in autumn today, but there you go. Maybe there's something about the history I don't understand. But that's why America celebrates Thanksgiving Day, because America has been influenced, even though it is a secular republic, it has been influenced by its Christian founding fathers. That is why Christians celebrate Easter Sunday and Christmas Day and Ash Wednesday, because the church in the past set aside certain days to honour certain truths of the Christian faith. They were not borrowing from paganism. That is the spurious lies of the ignorant. And it is completely legitimate for Christians to do so. Any other questions on the question of the Sabbath? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Any other questions on the Sabbath or something else?
Oh, no, on the Sabbath.
Go on.
What does it mean in Hebrew, the word Sabbath?
Just means 7. 7th day.
So the last day.
Last day of the week. Any other questions on any topic about or from Christianity? Go on.
Can you explain, so Matthew 12:5 and the link between Hosea 11:1, no, 11:1.
Right, you're going to have to get Hosea 11:1. Right, Matthew 12:5 says this: or have you not read in the law, or have you not read in the law that on the Sabbath the priests in the temple break the Sabbath and are innocent? 5:12. Sorry, Matthew 5:12. Right, okay. Matthew 5:12. Matthew 5:12, rejoice and be glad, for your reward in heaven is great. For in the same way they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Matthew 5, and you're going to read Hosea.
Yeah, my apologies. I'm all over the place. Hosea 11:1, Matthew 2:15. I do apologize.
Okay, if you're wrong the 3rd time, you'll have to go away and get your verses.
This is my last attempt.
Last attempt. Matthew 2 what?
2:15, and the link will be with Hosea 11:1.
Matthew 2:15. Matthew 2:15. He remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. Go read Hosea.
Hosea 11 will say, when Israel was a child, I loved him, and out of Egypt I called my son. But every time he went astray, he sacrificed to the Baals.
Right. So the link between the Hosea reference and the Matthew reference is that Jesus, as the perfect Israelite, his life exemplified the meta story of what Israel should have been. Israel was the son that was called out of Egypt to be a holy nation, a royal priesthood, devoted to the Lord and high and holy God, and to be holy. And Israel failed to do that, as Hosea says, fell into sin again and again and again. But when Matthew points out that Jesus Christ was called out of Egypt, it is showing that Jesus is the perfect Israelite, was called out of Egypt like the Israelites, but unlike the Israelites who consistently worship the Baals, the false gods of the Canaanites and others. Jesus Christ himself was faithful to the one true God without ever falling into idolatry. And that was the reference that Matthew is making. He is showing that paradigmatically Jesus is living the life that Israel was called to live, showing that he was the perfect man. Any questions on that point? Going once, going twice, going 3 times. Any other questions about any aspect of Christianity?
I've been reading the book of Exodus recently, and
You're reading what, sorry?
the book of Exodus in the Old Testament, and I trapped on the Exodus 21,
Yeah.
and I've read about God setting 7 rules if you have another wife, and I was thinking, why did God not allow to all prophets and throughout the Old Testament to have for people to have multiple wives?
Right. So that's the question. Okay. So ladies and gentlemen, what do we as Christians do about the polygamy in the Old Testament? We interpret the Old Testament through the teachings of Jesus. Jesus doesn't actually in his teaching say much about the Old Testament, but he does say some things. And on the question of divorce, he said that Moses allowed you to give a certificate of divorce, but that was not how it was in the beginning. That in the beginning, that there should be 2 who become one flesh. So in the beginning, God created Adam and Eve. Not Adam, Eve, Isabella, Catherine and Sarah, ladies and gentlemen. And so, since polygamy is a deviation from what God created in the beginning, like murder was a deviation, like rebellion and spiritual death were deviations, polygamy was a sin. But just as God allowed divorce because of the hardness of their hearts, God also allowed polygamy because of the hardness of their hearts. But in the New Covenant, whenever the Bible talks about marriage, it understands marriage, as Ephesians 5 verses 20 onwards does, as being emblematic, symbolic of Christ's relationship to the church, as Christ's marriage to the church. How many wives does Jesus have? One. And if we are meant to imitate Christ, how many wives must we have?
Uno.
And that is why in the epistles it says, let the elders of the church be men of one wife. And that is why polygamy is seen as a sin. That means that we in this country should prosecute and punish every Muslim in a polygamous marriage. That we should prosecute and punish every bigamist who has more than one wife. We should define our laws according to the New Covenant, and we should punish all of those people that are abusing the welfare system that you pay for in your taxes, where they have more than one wife and the other wives are living on benefits, pretending to be a single woman whilst they are married in the mosque. And your taxes are paying for that benefit fraud. But the liberal progressives of this country are so weak-minded because of their blind ideological liberalism. They are literally turning a blind eye to welfare scamming and welfare fraud that is contributing to your tax bill. This needs to become an issue. Every mosque must legally be obliged to declare every marriage, and every marriage must be recognised by the state, and all polygamous marriages must be outlawed, and all those who participate in polygamy must be punished. Any other questions on polygamy? Thank you very much. Can I get that? Wait, let someone else ask a question. On polygamy. Is it not on polygamy? Oh, sorry.
Over here to another country as well, they shouldn't be punished as...
Yes, and let's be clear, ladies and gentlemen. One of the things that is happening in this country is that Muslim men are fooling people into secret marriages. They're having one wife and then secretly not telling their first wife that they're sticking their poker into other fires, ladies and gentlemen.
Other flowers?
Other fires. Now let me explain why this is a problem. Let's imagine that the other fire happens to have certain faults with it, certain diseases, and then those diseases are transferred from one woman to the next. Doesn't that first woman have the right to know where her man is sticking his poker? Ladies and gentlemen, the reality is that secret marriages that are practiced in Islam are basically just a code for adultery, ladies and gentlemen. It's no better than going to a nightclub and sleeping around with different women in the nightclub. Don't take lectures from Muslims about the moral decadence of the West when Islam legitimates adultery and secret marriages, which is basically just the same thing as sleeping around in a nightclub and committing adultery against your wife. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to say, ladies and gentlemen,
Say it.
that any man who commits adultery against his wife,
What happens?
regardless of his religion, should be punished by the state. And we need to impose punishments on unfaithful men, ladies and gentlemen.
I agree.
Any other questions on the topic of polygamy?
Other questions?
Going once, going twice.
I'm worried about covenant, but
We're talking about polygamy.
so with regards to the prophets in the Old Testament,
Sorry, idiot over there is being rude.
with regards to the prophets of the Old Testament,
Yeah.
have polygamous relationships. How is that reconciled?
Right. So, ladies and gentlemen,
What's the question, Bob?
which prophet are you talking about?
Solomon,
Right. So what do we do about prophets like David who had polygamous marriages?
Yeah, Solomon.
Put your hand up if you're a Christian. Keep your hand up
Okay.
if you think David was sinless. There you go.
No, alcohol. Put it down, alcohol.
That's why you've got to pay attention.
We love the alcohol.
Ladies and gentlemen, nobody believes in Christianity that the prophets were sinless.
No one.
That is a stupid Islamic idea
This.
that isn't even supported in their Quran. But, ladies and gentlemen, we Christians don't believe in Islamic nonsense. We believe that all the prophets were sinners and their polygamy was a sin permitted because of the hardness of their heart. Like divorce was permitted because of the hardness of their heart. Any other questions on polygamy? Go on.
Why did he correct the prophets and told them to keep the monogamy?
Sorry?
Why didn't God correct the prophets and tell them that monogamy is the right way?
Right.
Okay, well then go tell him.
So why didn't God correct the prophets?
Why?
Ladies and gentlemen, I've already said, because of the hardness of their hearts. In other words, even if God had said, do not practice monogamy, they would have still practiced polygamy. Like, for instance, when you read the Judges and the people of Israel said, give us a king, give us a king, give us a king. What did God say to them? He said to them, if I give you a king, it will end in disaster. He wanted them to be ruled by judges. But because of the hardness of their heart, he gave them kings to rule over them. God works with the hardness of people's hearts because God is a merciful God who desires that all should be saved. Any other questions on the issue of polygamy?
So you mentioned that they were sinners for having
Yeah.
You just explained to 2 Samuel 12:18, where God says to David, to Israel and Judah, that you were given, God gave you these wives.
What does it say?
So I gave you your masters and to you and your masters' wives.
Yeah. Ladies and gentlemen, why then, given what I've just said, does God say in the scriptures that he gave David his wives?
Okay.
Did I not just say that God permitted polygamy because of the hardness of their heart? So if God permitted polygamy, he allowed David to have those wives. There is no contradiction in my argument and the scripture. If God permits it, he allowed it. If he allowed it, then that's why David has multiple wives, because God allowed David to succeed. Any other questions on polygamy?
Any other?
Sorry?
Only Christians. Only Christians. You can marry only Christians.
Whom should they marry? That's not the question of polygamy, sir.
Polygamy.
I want to settle on the question of polygamy by pointing this out.
Okay.
That when you look, ladies and gentlemen, at Muhammad and the understanding of marriage in Islam and compare it to Christianity, in every way, the Christian concept of marriage is superior. Is superior to the Islamic concept of marriage. In Islam, you can cheat and lie to your wife. In Christianity, you can't. In Islam, you can marry children. In Christianity, you can't. In Islam, you can physically abuse your wife on the suspicion of marriage. In Christianity, you can't. In Islam, you can. The relationship between man and woman is not equal in terms of how many people you can marry and what are the reasons for polygamy. So, for instance, if a man, according to Islamic fiqh, goes to another country and he can't keep it in his pants, he's allowed to have and miss your marriage. But the woman has to control her loins. Ladies and gentlemen, she's not allowed the excuse that the man is allowed. But in Christianity, both men and women must be equally faithful. So let me ask you this, women. Let me ask you this, Muslimas. Which religion is offering you the best deal? Islam or Christianity? Let me hear you, sisters. You Christian sisters. Which religion is offering you the best deal? Islam or Christianity?
Christianity!
There you go.